They sent 3 million pills to a small town in West Virginia. While American families mourn, these companies get richer. It's crooked pharma, it's pocketed politicians. Doctors writing prescriptions, enabling addiction. It's the stigma attached to dependency that people judge but don't listen. They'll engage from a distance and start treating you.
This was brought up because someone tagged us in a tweet that was basically highlighting what I assume to be chest hairs on the Mothman statue in Point Pleasant. And it got me really focusing on the detail of that statue. And we've mentioned before, and we have in our merchandise store, it does have a dump truck ass, but it's also got washboard 6-pack abs, a chest that really any Olympic athlete could be proud of. A healthy set, and look, one of your dogs, I don't know which one it is, but he or she is getting real excited about this. I don't know.
Yeah, Bosley's pretty pumped.
Yeah, and I don't blame him. I mean, look, if I had a body like that, I'd be barking too. And the chest hair, and I think he's got a V, like a V down at the waist area. It's really astounding to me, and I was thinking like he would make a great spokesperson for Old Spice or something like that. We need to switch it up a little bit. We need to get out of the traditional male human person advertising things like Old Spice, and I really think the cryptids is the next direction to go in.
I think that's the only fair thing. Yeah, the funny thing is, like, we talk about, like, Appalachian and West Virginia stereotypes, right? But then you got Mothman, which is like the opposite of, just ripped out of his damn mind, right? I mean, I don't know what he's doing. Like, he is just, that dude must have lived on Planet Fitness.
That's where he's from.
Yeah, oh, we did it. We now,
son of a
we
bitch.
figured it out.
We have done more to further the research on this creature than John Keel could have possibly imagined.
Oh my God! What a realization!
Yeah,
right there.
Instead of the bat signal, it's the lunk alarm, and you hit that, and that's what gets.
Yep. Yeah, that's the red light people are seeing, is that damn light that spins when the lunk alarm goes off.
Man, we're on to something.
Also, Planet Fitness smells like shit, which is exactly what people have been saying.
Yeah, I've walked into it a number of times and it smelled like rotten eggs, so that also tracks because that's what. And oftentimes there are men in black that are there who come to collect debts per se and pull you out. That tracks as well. They're also just in the black membership. Yeah,
it turns out that people, when they said they were running hills, they weren't. They were actually just caught on the elliptical while Mothman is over like squatting 400 pounds. I love this.
Oh, at least,
I think that this might be the breakthrough of, I would argue, the century?
I think that's fair, because there's, a lot of stuff has happened in the past 100 years, but nothing like this. What do you think he deadlifts? I think he deadlifts at least the weight of the Silver Bridge.
That's fair. Yeah, I think he started the Silver Bridge, but I'm pretty sure that dude, he could deadlift the New River Gorge by now.
That is true. The whole thing, not just the bridge. Also, the whole gorge.
Can we talk about what's missing from that statue? So you have the ripped abs, right? You have the perfect pecs, right? You have that little V that I have no idea how people get.
I don't know. I think they have to find a genie or something, but yeah.
Here's the thing that's missing, right? So you have all of those. The legs are massive, the dump truck ass, right? Mm-hmm. But really, I don't think there was enough detail on the muscular structure of those wings.
That's a good point.
You're telling me, right? So he's built like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but have wings that would carry Kevin Hart, and that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, man, yeah, you're right.
I
Honestly,
thought a lot about this.
honestly, like, do you think that the do you think that the Mothman statue was based off the body of Dwayne The Rock Johnson, or do you think that Dwayne The Rock Johnson's body was based off of Mothman? Yeah.
Okay, so Dwayne The Rock Johnson's dad, allegedly his dad, right, was Rocky Johnson, who was a very famous professional wrestler who was stacked, built like Mothman. But I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. Built like a brick shithouse.
I don't know the lineage past that. Something tells me Mothman is attached to that lineage.
Yeah, I think we need to do an Ancestry.com of Dwayne The Rock Johnson and start to pull back some of the layers of the onion.
It's a bunch of like kick-ass Samoans, because he's like, I think he's Samoan. It's a bunch of kick-ass Samoans, Mothman, Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah, you just see like Dwayne The Rock Johnson's like great uncle was best friends with Linda Scarberry in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, or something like that, and that's it.
We got to figure out. Well, you can't tell me too. Mothman had to have vacationed, right? So,
yeah. Well, he flies.
Right.
I mean, I feel like he could do it whenever he wanted.
Think about this. Like, he could have easily gone and visited that family throughout the time, right?
Sure.
Rock,
he could have flown to the Samoa.
The Rock comes along, and if I'm Mothman, let's say I'm Dwayne The Rock Johnson's great grandpa, I'm Mothman, and I'm his great grandpa.
Sure.
I go into hiding because I don't think you can build anything better than Dwayne The Rock Johnson. You've done it. You've succeeded. No. Your peaked. Species is now our species, or at least what our species now wants to be.
I completely agree. I think this is the beginning of our book on Mothman. This will serve as a premise for sure. I do, because there's no, like, you can't get better than The Rock. And he's got the personality to go with it too. Now, we don't know about Mothman's personality. I assume it's just fine. He didn't kill anybody. He just rise out of people.
I just thought of something. 2024, when The Rock becomes president, does Mothman get a seat at the table finally? Is this what Mothman has been working towards his entire life?
I think you're right. Well, at least he comes back.
Right. And then he can live freely. He could finally clear himself. He could say, look, it wasn't me that did all these terrible things. I was trying to save the day. That's why I invented The Rock.
Be a compelling argument. We're going to have to see. I think we're going to have to start that crowdfunding campaign to get The Rock to run in 2024.
And take a 23andMe.
We can have our own selfish...
Yes.
and take a 23andMe.
Yeah.
And 23andMe 2024. That's what the campaign's going to be called.
Yeah, Moth for life. I love it.
Look, we love Dwayne The Rock Johnson. We love Mothman and his chiseled body. And something else, John, that we love is Cornbread Hemp CBD. A sponsor of this show, sponsoring this series on opioids. I'm a big fan of it. I've used their gummies. I've used their oils. I really like it. It's always full spectrum, and that means as much THC as federal law allows. We like that. It's not going to get you high, but it's going to make you feel good, and it's going to help balance things out, and that's what we like.
Yeah, we like John? Those things. We like that it's flower-only extraction. We like, just like Afro Man, right? We love that love that we don't have to pick out the seeds and stems, unlike 99% of other CBD companies.
That's right. Trust Afro Man. If there's anybody that knows this type of industry, it's him. And the other cool thing about this, John, look, we choose our sponsors carefully, obviously, and something that we like to do is have ones that represent the local community. Cornbread Hemp is from Kentucky, and they're Kentucky's first USDA-certified organic CBD product. That means that the Department of Agriculture has certified that they are organically grown. So you can be sure that you are putting something that's good into your body, it's free of pesticides, and it's from Kentucky. What could be better than that?
Well, I'll tell you what can be better than that. 30-day guarantee. You don't like it, you send it back, they give you a full refund. So I'm telling you, you can have 29 of these let's say CBD gummies. You got one left, you didn't like it, send it back, you get a full refund. I don't think you're going to send it back though, Chuck.
No, I didn't send mine back. And I don't know of any other company that does that. Maybe they do. I don't know. But that tells you that they trust their product, and that's important. Something else to really understand about them, we had Jim on the show, the co-founder of Cornbread Hemp, and it's owned by him and his family. It's family-owned, crowd-funded. That means that they've raised money from people, not corporations. So it's not some corporate CBD that's just trying to take your money and make a profit. It's somebody that's really invested in this product and really wanting to make it better and wanting to make it good for you.
And Jim, as the only two-time guest of Appalachia, only two-time guest so far.
How much we like him.
He loves the people who listen to this podcast so much. I can't believe it. It's the deal of the century. You go on, you make a purchase. At the end, you type in Appalachia, APPODLACHIA, 25% off your entire order.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Let me put that into perspective. That's a quarter. That's like if you get a pizza with 8 slices, 2 of those slices are for free.
Jim is literally telling you right now, he's so confident in this that he can give you a quarter off, and he knows you're coming back, baby. He knows it.
Back. He knows you're going to get those gummies, and the gummies are delicious. Trust me, I've had them. They're amazing. Check it out, cornbreadhemp.com. Link in the show notes. Support this show. Support a Kentucky-owned business. End of it.
Oh, and they have dog CBD.
I wanted to, real quick before we kind of get into things, though, I want to put out an appeal to support our Patreon. Because, John, as you know, we've been working hard at it for over a year. And we've got a lot of exclusives on there. We've got a lot of extra content. We're doing a lot more for our supporters. And it only takes $5 a month. And it really helps us out. As we grow this podcast, we incur more costs when it comes to upgrading equipment, when it comes to getting the right platforms to do editing and uploading and all of that stuff, and just the time that it takes to put this together, to do the research, to do the editing, the video, the audio, make it sound not terrible, which I think if you go back and listen to episode 1 and now, there's a big difference, I hope. So it's something that we put a lot of time into, and we would love and appreciate your support. If you haven't been a Patreon member already, you can go to patreon.com/Appalachia and you can give as little as $5 a month, and it really makes a difference for us. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Look, the Patreon is one of those things that I don't think we thought would be one of the would be a focus of ours. Like, as we've grown and as we've kept going, I actually have a lot of fun with the exclusives. I think that it's one of the best parts of the episode, to be honest with you. Well, and it's not even part of the episode. You have to be a Patreon member. So, look, there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to happen over there too. I think we're going to do more Zoom sessions. Maybe we're going to do more Q&As. We're going to do tons of stuff. Also, I know I'm talking really weirdly, and it's because I lost my voice last night. So I'm powering through though. But anyway, patreon.com/Appalachia.
Yeah, if you want to hear Big John power through even more, there you go. Yeah, well, I wanted to put that out there just because we've really kind of built a community around the Patreon too, and it's been something a little bit of a labor of love for us, and it just helps really, I think, make sure that we provide the best quality stuff that we possibly can, including this series on opioids, which we've been working on pretty hard.
Very, very true.
Hard in the
very
paint.
True.
Which, speaking of that, we've got a phenomenal guest. So last week was the only time they're just going to hear from us on this, because we're not experts by any means, not even close, not even in the same universe. But we have experts coming throughout the next 4 episodes, including today. Eric Eyre, who is an investigative reporter with the Mountain State Spotlight, the watchdog journalism outlet in West Virginia. John, this was a big get for us just because I think Eric is so accomplished in his reporting on opioids and has really, I think blew the doors open with just how much of a role drug drug distributors have played in bringing pills into states. And so he's just a really impressive guy. I wanted to read some of his accolades real quick before we kind of get into the discussion about him. He won the Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting in 2017, which is extremely rare for somebody from a local news outlet. At the time, he was with the Charleston Gazette in Charleston, West Virginia. It is extremely rare. Most of the time, it goes to somebody from the Times, from the Washington Post, from those other, like LA Times is big outlets, but little old West Virginia hit the map, and so he won the Pulitzer for courageous reporting, performed in the face of powerful opposition to expose the flood of opioids flowing into West Virginia counties with the highest overdose rates in the country. 3 stories of his were included in his winning work for the Pulitzer, most notably a piece titled 780 Million Pills, 1,728 Deaths, which is a reference to the flood of pills into small counties in southern West Virginia. All of this, he did a lot of reporting on this and wrote a book recently called A Death in Mudlick, which I will link to. It's a great book. I read it, and it really is a powerful accounting of his reporting, the struggles he went through to get the right information from Attorney General Morrissey, from the drug companies, the distributors, everything. He's also just won a ton of national awards for investigative reporting. He's extremely accomplished, and we're really big fans of his work. John, your reaction to this interview?
Look, I knew it was going to be good. Okay, that was obvious. You know, you look at those credentials, and how can it not be good, right? I mean, especially with our groundbreaking ability to ask hard-hitting questions. I read that on our Yelp. I wrote it too, and look, I think this was one of those ones that you don't. In this interview, you'll see how close journalists get to their stories because, Eric, he tells you about it in the interview. I mean, this really wasn't his life. It wasn't something that he was going after in terms of journalism. He didn't leave school and say, I'm going to go cover opioids, right? But it's like our Patreon. It's become a labor of love for him, and that is what his job is now. I mean, if you look at a lot of his stuff, he's the guy that they go to now because of the all of the great journalism that he's done, all the research, all finding out just crazy stuff that's been going on. And again, to have a guy like that in West Virginia is rare. I mean, you just, if you have somebody like him, you usually don't keep them. They usually, they go off and go to the Times, whatever. They go to really big, journalistic outlets. But Eric stayed here, and I guarantee he could have left. But I think he just loves what he does now, and he makes a difference in everything he writes now, which I think is really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really interesting to kind of hear that he kind of stumbled into the subject of opioids about like 7 or 8 years ago and hasn't really stopped reporting on it ever since. And I think as evidence of your point that he's so important in this coverage is something that I think he first maybe mentioned on the show that came out that came out in court recently, because there is currently a trial underway with the 3 major drug distributors in Charleston, West Virginia right now, is that the drug distributors had a playbook on him and how to thwart his coverage, how to avoid having stories written by him because they viewed his reporting as such a threat to them. And if the drug distributors view him as a threat, you know that he's doing something right.
Yeah, you got to hear this interview because his reaction to that, I mean, and you could tell too, it's not like it's something that he's that he was expecting, you know what I mean? And come to find out it happened even before he broke, ground with, his reporting. So I think it's kind of like a prospect in baseball, right? Like, that they're going to be a great hitter one day and they're going to get to the league. I think people saw Eric and they thought this guy's going to be trouble even before he was trouble.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they had some good eyes on that.
Their scouts were right.
Damn straight. Well, let's get into it. Let's hear from Eric Eyre. Eric, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And at the outset, I really appreciate all the work actually that you and your colleagues are doing in Mountain State Spotlight. It's a really impressive organization that you guys have running there.
Thanks, I appreciate it. We're fortunate to have some really good young, eager reporters through that Report for America program.
Yeah.
So it's
I guess we can, jump right into it. Obviously, you've been covering the opioid epidemic for a while now. I'm kind of curious how you got started covering it in West Virginia, and just how that all came about for you.
Yeah, Chuck, I came into it in a kind of a strange or different manner. I was working down at the Capitol building, the State House, it's basically a state government reporter, legislative reporter, and we got a tip that our new Attorney General, Patrick Morrisey, had an inaugural party, and we were kind of surprised that he would have an inaugural party because the governor has inaugural parties, not usually uh, attorney generals or with treasurer or agriculture or whatever. So I went down the list of, somebody suggested I take a look at the list of the people that were paying for the inaugural. And we went down the list, and there was the normal ones like the West Virginia Coal Association, the West Virginia Natural Gas Association. And then we came to a name called Cardinal Health. So I asked somebody about Cardinal Health. They had given money to the inaugural, they had given money to his campaign. And it turned out that his predecessor, Darryl McGraw, the former Democrat that was a 20-year incumbent, had filed a lawsuit against Cardinal Health and other drug distributors. So we did a little more digging, and another person that was helping to pay for the inaugural was an organization called Capitol Council, which is a lobbying group in Washington, D.C. And it turned out that the Attorney General, Patrick Morrisey, his wife, was actually a lobbyist for Cardinal Health. And so she was a lobbyist for Cardinal Health while he was overseeing a lawsuit against Cardinal Health. And he said he had recused himself from the case, but we would find that evidence later that showed that he had not recused or stepped down from the case.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't know about. Funny enough, I did not know about McGraw filing a lawsuit pre-Morrissey. I didn't even think to connect that. So that's really interesting. When you first started this, I know that you said you transitioned from kind of State House to talk, to kind of covering opioids and
Yeah.
what was your goal? I mean, I know that you were just getting into it. Was there any goal to this research or to this coverage?
Initially, it was to see if it was true that Patrick Morrisey had actually recused himself from the case. But then, as I got digging deeper into things, I looked at some of the pill mill doctors and the pill mill pharmacies and all the I followed the litigation, and there were some sort of vague allegations that small towns were being, saturated or flooded with pills across the state. So I basically spent, John, the next probably 3 years kind of just getting up to speed on this lawsuit, getting up to speed on the opioid epidemic. Did stories about the rising numbers of opioid overdose deaths in the state, and kind of just dogged that story for the next 3 or 4 years. And here I am 8 years later, and I'm still doing it because we finally got this litigation in federal court in Charleston.
So I think looking towards some of the more substance of your work, and obviously which formed the work that won you the Pulitzer, which, by the way, congratulations about that. That's an incredible accomplishment by anyone, but especially, as I understand it, rare for a paper that's essentially not the Washington Post or New York Times. So that was incredible work. Your book, which I read and I really enjoyed, is called A Death in Mud Lick, and it's a reference to the title, which is a reference to the death of a coal miner named Bull Priest, who had been addicted to opioids after being prescribed them for an injury. And I'm wondering, what stood out to you about his story, and why did you choose to reference it in the title of your book?
Well, Mud Lick is the place where he passed away of an OxyContin overdose. But the reason I focused on him was basically because of his sister, Debbie Priest, who's basically an American hero. All this started with Debbie Priest, these 3,000 plus lawsuits. She filed a wrongful death lawsuit way back in 2005, After she settled, she started wondering where all these pills were coming from, and she actually started tailing some of the delivery drivers that were showing up at the local pharmacies, and she traced one of those plates back to Cardinal Health, and with the help of Jim Cagle, who's an incredible lawyer, they got their heads together, and they were the ones that came up with the idea to take it to Dow McGraw to file the lawsuits against Cardinal Health, the AmerisourceBergen, and about 12 other smaller regional drug distributors.
That's interesting, and her story really is incredible. And something that stuck out to me, just especially in the beginning of the book, is just how striking and blatant the system of moving pills was, especially in southern West Virginia. You had very intricate system set up of people driving people to Marietta and other places to get prescriptions and bring them back. And it was honestly sounded like it was done in the broad daylight a lot of times. Was that shocking to you, or did that come across as normal? Like, what was your reaction when you had learned all of that?
I mean, some of the numbers, the number of pills that went to these small towns. As you probably know, the poster child for this is Kermit, West Virginia, which has a population of, I think, less than 400, 380, something like that. And they were shipped over 3 years, more than 12 million prescription opioids, or if you do it over 2 years, a little bit less than 9 million. But it wasn't just Kermit. Williamson had upwards of 23 million pills over 5 years. And that's a town of about 3,000. Mount Gay in Logan County, there was another pharmacy there that was actually the highest receiver of opioids and dispenser of opioids in the state. So you had, these drive-through pharmacies, mostly independent pharmacies, just loaded up with people. A story I tell, I've seen some. Jim Cagle gave me some investigative footage shot by a private investigator that he had hired for the case, and they showed just these crowds of people, lined up outside this real tiny pharmacy. And when I say tiny, it's not like the size of a Rite Aid or something. It's the size of like a quarter of a McDonald's or something. And they're just lined up in cars. You can see the footage. There's cars from as far away as Florida. You can actually see one delivery truck shows up from a company called Miami Lucan, which is no longer in business. It was a regional drug distributor. But, the one in Kermit, the crowds got so big, as I write in the book, they had to put a camper trailer on the property. They sold hot dogs and hamburgers and soda pop because people were getting sick of waiting in the long lines. You can see on the video footage people trading pills for cash. It was just an incredible thing. We found out that in the subpoenas later too, they talk about literally, dispensing opioids over the counter. They couldn't get the cash register shut. There was so much cash because it was pretty much all cash only business. So it was just, this incredible like Wild West. And we found out later that in this tiny town of Kermit, the pharmacist that owned the pharmacy, he was making upwards of $7 million a year. So big business.
Gracious.
Wow.
And I think it was in the top 10 for most prescription opioids of any facility in the country. And that means, big, New York City, LA, stuff like that. It was just totally out of hand.
That's incredible. I mean, we see, everybody kind of saw the headlines when they came out, but when you break it down like that, it's even more of a worse situation, whenever you think about comparing it to, let's say, New York City, for instance.
Yeah.
So one of the themes throughout the book is, you mentioned this a little bit, is the murky relationship between Cardinal Health and Attorney General at that time, now still Patrick Morrisey. Could you explain that theme for people who haven't read the book?
Yeah, I mean, so he was in charge of a lawsuit against Cardinal Health that he inherited from Darryl McGraw, the Democratic former Attorney General, and he denied that he played any role in the lawsuit or wasn't calling the shots in the lawsuit. But we later would find records that showed that he was meeting privately with Cardinal lawyers. He said he was meeting with them not to talk about the case, but there's a letter, an email that says that it's regarding state of West Virginia versus Cardinal Health. Later, we had some documents that were leaked to us that we failed to get through Freedom of Information Act and a court hearing, but they were leaked to us that showed that the Attorney General was insisting on being at court hearings and basically was calling the shots in the lawsuit. And it mentions Cardinal Health throughout the email that we got. But he was eventually cleared of any wrongdoing, but the Office of Disciplinary Counsel for the state of West Virginia gave him a stern warning that he should have gotten out of that case much sooner.
Yeah, and I won't go into detail on here, but the way that you ended up acquiring the email that discussed, I think it was his involvement in the Cardinal lawsuit or had mismatched when he had recused himself, was really interesting, about someone that dropped it off at your house after you'd been trying to get it for a FOIA for 2 years. I thought it was really fascinating. One thing I'm interested in, you are essentially in sort of an not really an adversarial relationship, but you're going up against sort of the West Virginia Attorney General, someone that has a lot of power. You're doing a lot of important reporting that the big three drug distributors probably don't like very well, and they have tremendous amount of power. Did you probably have some sort of target on your back or something? I mean, did you ever feel threatened? Did anybody try to pressure you? What was the situation like that?
Well, remind me to talk to you about the court hearing this week, because I'm going to go back because some new developments came out of the court hearing, the trial this week. But Patrick Morrissey threatened to sue me and the newspaper several times. In retaliation for the articles, he filed an antitrust investigative action against the Gazette-Mail, asking for all of our employment records, personnel records, and budgets, and our financial records. That case was eventually dismissed by a judge in Putnam County that was hearing the case. When we got the leaked documents, another thing, Chuck, when we got the leaked documents, his top deputy lawyer called our lawyer, Pat McGinley, who was working free on the case. He's a professor at WVU, and he said that if we ran the story in the paper, we would face quote unquote sanctions if they were trying to stop the story from being published.
Wow.
But of course, there's the famous Pentagon Papers case that you can't preempt a story like that. There's a precedent that you can't stop stories like that. Now, going back to what I learned last week, which was a total surprise for me, during the opening arguments, and I've since gotten the documents, the trade group for the opioid distributors is called HDA or HDMA, and we found out that there's a memo going back to 2015 that they had a strategy called, I'm looking it up right here, the Crisis Playbook, in how it was like how to deal with the media, and they talked about how they could they list me by name throughout the report, saying, what can we do to basically, I don't know what the word is, not necessarily thwart, but to blunt my reporting.
Wow.
To present other sides. This is I still haven't done a story on it. I'm not sure how to write a story about myself.
Right. Yeah.
being blocked. Um, it's it's it was very much a surprise to me. I had no idea, and so you know that the group HD is called HDA or HDMA. Patrick Morrissey at one time was the top lobbyist for that group, the trade group that represents the drug distributors. On the board of directors of the HDA are all of the all three of the big three have representation on the board of directors.
Wow. Of course.
But I never
he
felt,
was a lobbyist.
I wasn't followed or anything. I was reading Patrick Reagan-Keefe's book about the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma, and I guess they had a private investigator in a black SUV outside his house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard about that, but
Yeah.
nothing like that. I say to people that say, were you scared? Well, first of all, I didn't know how, when I got into this at first, it took me a while to figure out how big these companies were. As I write in the book, McKesson's the 8th largest company according to the Fortune 500.
Yeah.
AmerisourceBergen is 10, and Cardinal Health I think is like 12. They kind of shift around from year to year, but these are big companies. I mean, you've got Walmart at the top of the list. You've got Apple, you've got Exxon, and then all of a sudden you come to this McKesson and Marisol, and you're like, who, what? And I didn't realize at the time they were so big. I kind of think at some point I had been saying that they really weren't concerned with me because we weren't the Washington Post or New York Times, and they figured nobody was going to see the stories. I don't know what the governor said the other day. Somebody was like a mosquito on a dinosaur's ass or something like that. I think that's the way it kind of looked at me. But this new crisis playbook that came out kind of changed that for me. And this was 2015, and remember the Pulitzer story that won the Pulitzer didn't run until December 2016. So this was a year before that.
Oh, so the playbook came out and they were writing that about you in 2015.
Yeah, in 2015.
Oh, wow.
I have to, frankly, I've got to go back and check and see, look at the timing of it, what particular articles I was releasing, because, basically I was just following the lawsuit was going on at that time against the distributors. So I was attending court hearings, but nothing huge. So I have to go back and look and kind of match up the dates and find out what I was writing that had them so concerned. I guess they wanted to keep it in the bottle and not let it, spread.
Wow. Well, I mean, you're doing a good job if you haven't even published the article that kind of that gets you well known nationally, and they're still already making a playbook of it. It's like it's like being an offense and trying to play a defense that you've never actually seen. So that's incredible.
Yeah, the whole initiative, even though they called this the crisis playbook, I'm looking at it now, was called Turning the Tide in West Virginia.
Wow.
And what's bad about that, of course, is they weren't talking about turning the tide and reducing the number of opiates they were shipping.
Right.
They were talking about turning the tide of their quote unquote image in West Virginia.
Wow, that's incredible. You kind of mentioned this a little bit, but there's currently litigation going on, and you're covering a trial right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Could you give us a little insight on what that trial is?
Yeah, this is called the Bellwether case, or the landmark trial. This is the first trial that's gone off against the opioid distributors. They had one a year or two ago in Cleveland that settled before the trial started, but this actually started. This is the first of more than 2,000 up to possibly 3,000 cases. And in this case, it's the Cabell County and City of Huntington and Cabell County versus the big three distributors. And as you probably know, that Huntington and Cabell are really, even more so than Kerman and Mingo County, are the epicenter of the opiate epidemic. They've been through a really tough time, and they made some real progress prior to the pandemic. reducing opioid deaths, opioid or drug overdose deaths. But so it's these, the city and the county squaring off against the big three distributors. And what happens in this case, now it's a non-jury trial. They call it a bench trial because it's just a judge, there's no jury. But depending on what he awards Cabell and Huntington, could have awards, or if they even if they reach a settlement, which we thought they were going to do last week and did not. But what happens here, the dollar amount that's awarded, if there is an award, that there, just every county, I think except one, and I'm not sure which one it is in West Virginia, is suing these drug distributors. That will affect the amounts of those in those cases as well, based on population. So it really, what happens at this trial, it is not going to stay here. It's going to have statewide repercussions and possibly national repercussions.
Yeah. Well, and especially because, unlike Purdue Pharma, which was a manufacturer and has declared bankruptcy, lost billions of dollars because of lawsuits, these are distributors. And I think their main argument, if I recall, is that they're just the middleman. They're not the ones responsible, and they blame it on everybody else. So it does seem like it could be a really a striking verdict if one does come down. I'm kind of curious, so to wrap this up, you started covering this the opioid crisis a number of years ago. I'm wondering, how has the news coverage of it changed since you started writing about it? Because obviously the topic itself has gained a lot of national notoriety, and it's a subject of talk for a lot of people now, where it wasn't probably back when you started. So I'm just kind of curious, maybe from your perspective as a journalist, how the news coverage has changed.
Well, yeah, back in 2015, there was a lot of people that were, just blaming the quote-unquote addict, and I usually don't like to use that term, substance use or person with substance use disorder. There was a lot of blame being put there. I think my coverage in particular opened up that, there was more than Purdue Pharma was responsible for this. And frankly, it's, I get criticized that I didn't put enough in about doctors, but then my mom was like, why aren't you blaming the doctors more? Which I did. It did a lot of articles about pill mill doctors. Mm-hmm. But, at the end of the day, it's just basically this rigged system where you've got crooked doctors, prescribing the drugs. You've got, rogue pharmacists accepting cash and, dispensing, opioids to people from Florida and West Virginia. And you've got the distributors, of course, and you've got the manufacturers, and you've got lobbyists, and you got politicians that kowtow to the industry. And it's all just, one big rigged system. It's been described by one of the West Virginia state police officers that was took a deposition. He described it as a legal drug cartel, and one of the lawyers for the distributors, was really taken aback by that. But now, and that probably statement was back in June 2016, but now it's pretty much accepted. A lot of people that are covering this, just all different facets say, it really is like a legal drug cartel.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any other better word for it than that, for sure. Well, Eric, thank you so much again for joining us, and thank you again just for the important work that you've done and continue to do. I know that I speak for all of our listeners when I say that we really appreciate the hard work that you put into all your reporting on this, because it really has changed the way that people view the crisis and really opened a lot of people's eyes just to how significant it really is. So really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much to Chuck, John. Appreciate the focus you put on Appalachia. Really enjoyed your awards. I think that got a lot of hits, a lot of retweets. That was great, and I think appreciate that you gave. I guess it's people who tweet or your followers that vote, but the Mountain State Spotlight got a shout out.
Our fans love Mountain State Spotlight.
Yeah.
Look, all of Appalachia. There were people all over the region voting for you all. It wasn't just West Virginia. They love y'all.
Okay, well now you've set the bar so high. We're gonna have to deliver.
Yep, exactly. That's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm
It's a
doing
good
it.
idea. I mean, it's trying to change the dynamic of, keep local news alive, which I know you guys really support. I don't think long-term newspapers have a lot of viability. I mean, the Gazette Mail still does great work, but I think this is going to be the model for the future. So I'm crossing my fingers, and hopefully we can produce some more investigative, in-depth work in the coming years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope so. Well, again, thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it, and we really appreciate talking to you today.
Okay, thanks so much. We'll see you.
Thank you. See you.
All right, that was our interview with Eric. What an asset to the state of West Virginia. What an enemy to the drug distributors and to Attorney General Morrissey. And I think that the state and really, the country, quite frankly, has benefited from his work. And him and all of his colleagues at Mountain State Spotlight, I'll give them a quick shout out because they're basically the dream team of investigative journalists and reporters for the state of West Virginia. And if you're not already following them, if you're not subscribed to them, please do so. They're doing some of the most important work in the state, and we need to support local journalism. So that's my quick plug to them.
Yeah, they're great. They have a lot of, and Eric is just part of that team. I mean, I think that's the crazy thing. Like, they're kind of like, you ever watch Space Jam? Of course you have.
Have I ever watched Space Jam? Are you kidding?
Well, I was gonna make it.
Honestly,
I was gonna make a
really
joke.
insulted.
I was gonna make a joke of how much you used to like R. Kelly, but then I stopped.
It's funny because I actually hated R. Kelly, and in sixth grade, my sixth grade graduation, we had to sing "World's Greatest," and I refused to sing it. Yep. I refused to sing it. I didn't do it because you know what?
The reason I asked about that is because they kind of are the good version of the Monstars. Like they're good guys, but they also have great journalistic powers that nobody else has. But they're all on one team. It's insane. So I mean, it's a team that I will root for. Is what I'm trying to say. Even though I rooted for the Monstars in Space Jam. I'm not gonna lie.
That's kind of weird.
Great.
First of all, I'm insulted that you would even suggest I never watched Space Jam. Great movie.
Look,
my entire room was decorated. I had a Space
up.
Jam themed party at Skate Country.
It's called. Look, I was trying to tee up as a co-host. I was trying to tee up and let you roll.
Well, look, you teed me up here because much like Space Jam, the drug companies, the coal companies, the whoever are oftentimes the Michael Jordan of their industry. So they're tough competition to go up against.
Yeah, it's true.
And
but anyway, they're a great group. That's the main point here, and they really are. And I think that there's going to be. I'm excited to see how far they grow, and I'm really excited to see what what happens to the region, because I think we're going to have a lot more journalists like that.
Yeah, my hope is that there are more Mountain State Spotlights that pop up throughout the country, especially in Appalachia, and I think there are. I do. It's a nonprofit newsroom, so not attached to any corporate funding or anything like that. But speaking of investigative journalism, the person on this show in charge of investigating bullshit, one Big John Eisner. Do you have a beef this week?
I do have a beef this week. I do.
Oh man, okay, all right, let it rip then. Let the beef fly.
This one's
put it on the grill.
This one, I think this might be the one that I get the most pissed off at. I am so sick of people looking at our series on opioids, right, and thinking that either one, we don't understand the benefits behind having access to these drugs, which we're not morons. We do understand the benefits that are, that these drugs bring. We also understand the human element of things, where people are manipulated to get addicted to things so that companies can make more money, CEOs can buy 2 more houses, and fucking shareholders can continue to gain wealth. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, we all hate to see them with just the one house. It's really
tough
sad
on them. And so I'm so sick of hearing that. Believe it or not, you can criticize bad people and still say that their product has merit. Look at the fucking MyPillow guy. He is a shit person. But the MyPillow, probably okay. Sold a lot, right? I'm not going to buy it. But still,
Milo.
Still up.
John, my name is Mike Lindell, and I just want to thank you. We are a sponsor of this podcast.
We have the president. Have you seen that?
We
have you
got
seen that
him.
video where he's holding up the phone on TV. Anyway, let's get back to it. I'm so sick of that, and I apologize for the language. I got fired up right there. Anyway, the other thing that I'm really sick of too is the fact that like people continue to try and dumb down the idea of addiction. They try and say that the reason people get addicted are so many different things, but I think some of the research that you showed last time that showed that these companies knew what they were doing. It wasn't even the fact that like they had a hint of it. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew people would get addicted and they knew people would die. But again, we have a lot of people across this region who have been manipulated, brainwashed by these companies to essentially protect them more than they protect their neighbor, which totally blows my mind because the Appalachia I grew up in is not like that. We would much rather protect our neighbors than just some random company. But that continues to be a problem that we see.
I was a little, I don't want to say surprised, but there is a lot of people who will go so far as defend the drug companies and complain that what we're doing is harming chronic pain patients.
Yeah.
Because
I keep seeing that.
And so which is interesting because I think, like you said, the assumption is that like, oh, if we're criticizing drug companies, we just don't want opioids, period. And that's not the case at all. We understand the value that they bring and the pain relief that they bring. It's really important, but it's also the case that these companies, like you said, and like we talked about last week, manipulated it for profit, not because of some altruistic good Samaritan, a part of their corporate soul that wanted to help people. That was not the reason. And we're not advocating for eliminating opioids. It's just a matter of holding companies accountable and understanding and assessing the risk and understanding that they're highly addictive, and we can't target your blame at the right entities, target them at the corporate entities, not the people who have become addicted to them, and not the people who are trying to shine a light on the corporate greed and profit mechanism.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, if you look at the people who continue to do this, most of the time, I'm just seeing the people that it is are the same people who would argue like that, Democrats are like sheep falling in line, and they're conservatives who continue to kind of push single-digit ideology like they always do, like they continue to do, but then they fall in line behind these companies and continue to like try and protect them, even though those companies have done jack shit for their community. I will 100% give them credit that they were able to establish the ability for somebody to have access to pain management. 100%, I hand that to them. There's two problems, though. One, they're just terrible people running this company. These companies, they continue to be terrible people. They continue to literally, they look at, their computer screen as two things. They see number of deaths and they see stacks of cash. That's it. So as long as the stacks of cash keep coming in and they can at least kind of make excuses, right? Because that's what they do. They say like, well, if they would have used it as prescribed, they'd be all right. But that's not true either, because shit, you pointed it out last time, people were using drugs as prescribed and still dying. And these companies know that. And that's part of the problem. Stop protecting people who literally don't care whether or not you live or die. That may not be what they try to present themselves as, but if you look at the documents in these court hearings, if you look at it blows my mind, the email exchanges, the text exchanges that are provided in these court documents, they're disgusting. And they're people who blatantly, I mean, we saw it, we posted this on Twitter, like the pillbillies, right? Like that's what they were referring to people in West Virginia as. Yeah, we will. That's fine. But it's just stuff like that continues to. It blows my mind. Again, the Appalachia that I know and I love, they're the same people who protected coal miners over coal companies, right? Like they looked at the person rather than the entity, and they knew what was the important part. And I think now we're starting to lose that because, we're creating excuses for these companies to continue to kind of manhandle our communities, even though we've seen now for years that their product, although does have benefits, continues to allow for them to manipulate a ton of people. It leads to deaths, it leads to addictions, and it leads to just worst case scenarios. People coming in way worse than they ever were before.
It's kind of like it's not like big oil, We can't deny the benefit of gasoline in our cars, but it's also the case that they've manipulated people. They've lobbied against cleaner energy and renewable resources, so that because it's to their benefit and it's for profit. Just to kind of cap this off, because if there were any doubt in anybody's minds at all that this is a profit motive, just wanted to just toss in a little C-suite salary data for you. John, do you want to take a guess at the CEO salary of McKesson, one of the biggest pharmaceutical distributors in the country?
I know McKesson donates a lot of money because they donated a lot of money to my opponent and people like him. So I'm going to assume it's really high. I'm going to say $7 million.
$7 million is an interesting guess, a good one, but not really on the mark for CEO Brian S. Tyler from 2019. I would encourage you to double that, then add $1 million. He's at 15.4.
I essentially just tried to think of what Manchin's daughter made when she was with Mylan. That's what I was trying to base it off of.
Yeah, that's fair. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, Don't worry about these people. They're fine. They've got plenty of money. Yeah, it's not going to hurt them.
It's like saying, look, I understand that Walmart has benefits, right? It has access to a lot of products, and people can walk in and buy what they want. But I also can tell you that it has damaged communities. It's created the need for low socioeconomic jobs that will never lead to any advancement, and has killed mom and pop shops. And the CEO there, his name is McMansion. So look, it's one of those things. It's going to constantly be, you can say that things have benefits, but you also can easily point out, or should point out, the negative sides of things, especially if they're killing people, point blank.
Truth. For the record, it is McMillan.
Okay.
But yeah, we all do. We all got issues. But speaking of issues, that's the end of this issue of Opioids, Part 2. Thank you for listening. We're going to be back next week with a great interview from Dr. Sydney McElroy, not just of podcast fame, but also of fame in her community for working with the community on harm reduction. She's super smart, one of the best people we've talked to for this, and looking forward to having her next week. Anyway, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.